Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haramai, and welcome to our weekly podcast, The Niche Cast. We're from the-case.com, where you can read about some Aotearoa sporting matters. At the moment on the website, we have Kiwi-NRL spotlights for Josiah Karapani, made his debut for the Broncos. We've got the Taharoa takeover with Tain Tuaupiki. That is Tain Tuaupiki and not Tane Tuaupiki, which Andrew Voss kept calling him, which was one of... That commentary performance was diabolical, and I'd have to say Vossi and Cooper Cronk, they might be the worst commentary pair. Because you had Voss, like, I don't even know if Vossi is watching the game, and then he's referring...
Vossi's just out there hallucinating.
He literally is. And then you've got, he keeps saying Tane Tuaupiki, which, like, respect if you want to, you know, get a bit moldy and you want to upgrade it to Tane Tuaupiki, but it's just Tain Tuaupiki. And Cronk, he literally only thinks there's halfbacks on the field. Like, this is going to be a big set for Jerome Luai. Nothing happens. Or this is a big moment for Jerome Luai. Nothing happens. Oh, you got to watch out for Isaiah Yeo because he plays like a halfback. Or Tamaita Martin made a bad kick. He sucks. Let alone the whole fact that they portrayed the Warriors as sucking. And everything the Warriors did was wrong. And it was kind of ruined the viewing experience. But of course, the Warriors won and they rectified it, so it was all good. But it is to say that the Kiwi-NRL spotlight is for Tain Tuaupiki and not Tane Tuaupiki. And this morning I did whip up a Kiwi-NRL spotlight for Paul Roach. So all of those are on the website right now, as well as the preview to that game, where, let me check how I phrase this, because I was interested what would happen for the Warriors against the Panthers. And in writing the preview, when I shared it, I wrote, if Shaun Johnson is irreplaceable, then why do the Warriors stink with Shaun Johnson doing everything? And what happened? Shaun Johnson's not irreplaceable.
They won without him.
Because they won without him. So there's plenty of rugby league coverage as usual on our website, the-case.com. We got the notes from the Wellington Phoenix loss, which was a bummer, but they lost, and we'll talk about it, but you can read about it on our website. We've got a Tall Black squad breakdown on our website. Go have a read about it, and also got a deep dive into the Black Caps T20 World Cup squad. Lots of stats and notes for the Black Caps T20 World Cup squad. That is on our website at the moment. Busy weekend writing about Aotearoa sport. So if you love Aotearoa sport as much as we do, head on over to our website, the-case.com, where you can read about it. Of course, we're on X Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on YouTube. We've got the podcast, Apple, Spotify. You can buy us a coffee if you want to make a donation. You can join the Patreon whānau. And this is an interesting spot because homie on Patreon, big old Baxter, he had a feeling. And he responded to our subscriber podcast, which we recorded on Thursday. That's available for the generous folks on Patreon and those with a paid Substack subscription. We previewed this Warriors game against the Panthers, and Baxter had a feeling. He had a feeling the Warriors were going to win. So shout out to Baxter because the Warriors won. And if you do appreciate our work in covering Aotearoa sport to the best of our abilities, you can join the Patreon whānau. You get a bonus podcast every week. You fund us directly. And we're copying the newsletter that we send out every Monday and Friday. We're just copying that straight into Patreon. So if you're a member of the Patreon whānau, you get all the Niche Case stuff right there on Patreon with a bonus podcast. And of course, we also have our newsletter coming out every Monday and Friday. Mandatory reading for any Kiwi sports fan. That's available via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com. And if you want to, if you're a native on Substack, you can upgrade to a paid Substack subscription and access our subscriber podcast every week through Substack as well. Lots of ways to support our stuff that we do. the podcast, the newsletter, the website deep dives. It's all there for you, and it's all there for Aotearoa and Aotearoa sport. We start our podcast with a dose of mindfulness just to ground us and invigorate us.
Yeah, and hopefully this will be grounding and invigorating when I quote, I'm assuming some old Greek fellow here called Publilius Cyrus from a book called Sententiae, which is not one I'm familiar with. I'm working from the dictionary quotations here, so I'm going a little bit lucky dip, but I like this one. He says, "No man is happy unless he believes he is." That's where it starts, you know? It begins in the mind.
You always hit the spot with your mindfulness, and because, you know, sometimes we do get a bit sad. But then that sadness is just coming from you thinking that you're sad.
Yeah.
So if you were sad and then you start thinking, well, actually, I'm happy. And usually that comes about through gratitude. Happy to be here, grateful to be here, grateful for the things that I do have. Then you're happy.
Or at least satisfied, you know, which is also an improvement. And it's like allowing yourself to do the stuff that makes you happy as well. Like I'm feeling miserable. I don't want to get out of bed, but I'm gonna go for a walk or something, or I'm gonna whatever it is. I'm just gonna watch that movie or read that book or whatever, engage in whatever that thing was that I enjoy doing, and I'm gonna allow myself to be treated to that kind of thing. Like it's that all of this stuff. That's an example of how physically that stuff can change your mindset. But it all begins with just that note in your brain of allowing yourself to do this, like letting yourself be happy. Kind of is the only switch there needs to be, because once you allow it to happen, you basically make it happen. It's kind of that simple.
Beauty. Let's dive into this Warriors victory over the Panthers. I got two little bits to start us off here. And the first is another, I don't know, for some reason I was mad frustrated during that game, as you may have already caught on to. But frustrated about everything except the Warriors footy, which was pretty damn impressive. The first frustration was the Penrith Panthers slowing down the play the ball of the Warriors. And it felt like, especially when you get into the 20-meter zone, the 10-meter zone, the Panthers were just laying all over the Warriors. And the Warriors couldn't get any quick play the balls. And the referee put his whistle away. He didn't give the Warriors many set restarts, didn't get any penalties for slowing down the ruck. So throughout that game, I was like, oh, the Warriors, they're not getting any quick play the balls. And obviously you're frustrated that the Panthers are just like, they got their hand in the ruck, they're laying all over the ruck, they're hugging them until the very last moment. And in the stats this played out, the Warriors had a 3.58 second play the ball speed. The Panthers had a 3.01 second play the ball speed. But the Warriors won. The Warriors scored 22 points on the Panthers. And aside from, like, once the Warriors got into their rhythm and what they were trying to do, it felt pretty good that the Warriors were going to score tries down the Panthers' end. So through that frustration and trying to get a bit of mindfulness into my daily activities, I was like, well, yeah, it's frustrating. The Panthers were laying all over the Warriors in the ruck and slowing them down. But the Warriors scored tries. The Warriors scored points. The Warriors won the game. And I was like, well, that's pretty damn impressive, because they didn't have any quick play the balls down the Panthers' end. Of a similar ilk, I was thoroughly impressed with the fact that the Warriors defeated the Panthers 22-20 in the NRL. And we'll get into some of the young players who are playing in the NRL team. But it was a young Warriors team. Players were, getting more opportunities. You got Tamaita Martin, a halfback. You got other players like Jacob Laban was playing centre, second row, covering in everything. Adam Pompey's back into the team. Ali Leotawa's in the team. Paul Roach is playing 68 minutes. Jazz Tavanga comes out of nowhere and he's one of the best players on the field. And of course, we've got the regular heroes of that Warriors team. The Warriors also defeated the Panthers in New South Wales Cup, 22-10. So both Warriors teams defeated the Panthers by scoring 22 points. And as I wrote yesterday in our newsletter, which you should have already read, the Warriors defeated that Panthers team in New South Wales Cup with 11 players under the age of 21 years old. This is how I broke it down. Under 19s in the New South Wales Cup team that defeated the Panthers. Motu Pasikala playing fullback. Sio Kelly, Jacob Auloa, Kalis Fatialofa, Leka Halasima. All those dudes except for Leka Halasima played SG ball earlier in the season. Leka Halasima's 18 years old and he doesn't play SG ball. He doesn't play under 21s. He's 18 years old and he only plays New South Wales Cup. That's how good he is. But he's under 19s. Also, in that New South Wales Cup team, we had a bunch of under 21s players. Luke Hansen, former Panther. Makai Tafua, Tanastawa Smith, Eddie Iramia, Toby Crosby, Caleb Lehman. So let me get this straight. The Panthers, one of the best development pipelines in the world. One of the best NRL teams in the world. Because they're world champions. Because that's what you do in America. The Panthers are one of the most celebrated, decorated systems and pipelines and teams and organizations floating around right now. And I love the Panthers. But the Warriors beat them with a bunch of second-tier players in the NRL, and they beat them in the New South Wales Cup with a bunch of under-21s, 11, 17. That's at least half the team that is under 21 years of age. So this is where it's like how impressive that weekend of Warriors footy was compounds on like the NRL team. They compounded on top of a impressive New South Wales Cup performance as well. And if you're buzzing about the Warriors right now in a good sense, you got to tap in with what's happening at New South Wales Cup level, because this is a very young New South Wales Cup team. And it's been that way even when you had Tane Tuaupiki playing fullback and doing all the kicking. You had Paul Roach playing hooker and halfback in the team this year. Ali Leotawa's been playing centre, obviously. Jacob Laban's been in another team. That New South Wales Cup team didn't have Zion Mai'uu either, because he was 18th man for the NRL team. So instead of Tane Tuaupiki at fullback, you got Motu Pasikala, who was fresh out of high school. Instead of Paul Roach at hooker, you've got Makai Tafua from Christchurch. You've got Jacob Auloa, who is an SG ball player. Like, this is a very interesting phase for the Warriors, because last year their New South Wales Cup team featured a lot of outer statesmen. Patarika Vaivai, you've had James Gavey. Those type of characters were playing New South Wales Cup alongside Tane Tuaupiki, Paul Roach, Ali Leotawa, Jacob Laban, Mai'uu, and those characters. However, this year, the New South Wales Cup team is all about young players. Most of them are under 21s. And they just beat the Panthers. They had a draw against the Panthers a few weeks ago as well. So they've played the Panthers in New South Wales Cup twice over the last month, and they're undefeated. A draw and a win, with lots of young talent playing for that New South Wales Cup team. So I'm sure we'll touch on some details in the NRL game over the next few minutes as well. But I want to tell all Warriors fans, and I'm also building out this idea because I do love the Kiwi-NRL spotlight angle as well. I think the young players from New Zealand are better than the young players from Australia. You can see this in the Warriors system, and you can also see it in some of the young players who were notable performers in Magic Round. Here's the list I whipped up for the newsletter yesterday. Matthew Tomoko, Dean Mariner, Josiah Karapani, Xavier Willison, Raymond Tuaimalo Vainga, Keanu Kinney, Aaron Clark, Leo Thompson, Kale Iro, who's from Cook Island, spent a little bit of time in Auckland, Griffin Neame, Taintua Piki, Lea Tawa, Paul Roach, Will Warbrick, Alec MacDonald, Solomon Alai Malo, who had a funky battle with Jermaine Sarko, both of them, winger on winger, they're both from Hornby and Christchurch. So a bit of Hornby on Hornby crime in that game, and of course Connolly Lemuelu. So you've got big performances from Kiwi-NRL juniors, and you've also got a Warriors team that is full of young talent from Aotearoa that is consistently playing at a high level. Like, they were one of the best New South Wales Cup teams last year with a lot of these youngsters, Leotawa, Laban, and Maiu'u. And now they're a good New South Wales Cup team full of under-21 players. So it's a credit to the Warriors system, but I also have this like building idea in my mind, this building storyline that the Kiwi-NRL juniors from New Zealand are better than many of their counterparts in Australia. And you only need to look at like how some of these players have performed as soon as they moved to Australia. Dean Mariner dominated. Matthew Tomoko dominated. Xavier Willison's dominated. Keanu Kinney's dominated. Leo Thompson's dominated. Griffin Neame's dominated. Like, these aren't regular Joe Schmoes. These are genuinely some of the best players from Aotearoa, but also like Mariner, Keanu Kinney, Xavier Willison. They were schoolboy stars in Australia after they moved. So there's a lot of great stuff happening in the Kiwi-NRL ranks. But I'm curious what you thought about that Warriors versus Panthers game. Any questions you got? Any comments from the performance? How were you feeling watching it?
Well, I think on the commentator buzz, the bit that struck me was throughout the first half, the whole thing about how the Warriors are making too many errors and they're just not they're not playing precision footy and all this, whereas they had a better conversion rate than or completion rate rather than the Panthers. And also the Warriors were making mistakes on like tackle 5 inside the 20, and the Panthers were making mistakes in their own half early in sets. Like, those are not the same thing. It was a little bit of a weird hand over one eye. And probably, to be honest, probably caught playing into a narrative that's been the case for the Warriors in previous weeks, but kind of wasn't the case in this week. It was like a different, even though they were still making some errors there, they were making errors in a sort of like, we're adjusting to playing with a different halfback and a few different options here. And it's not clicking perfectly, but you can see what they're doing and you can see what they're trying, and you can see they're actually like showing some shape out to the left side, not just the right side as well. And that probably helps their attack look a whole lot better, is that they actually had like the 3 sections going. You're always going to have Adam Blake just charging through blokes in the through the middle, but you're also looking to stretch things out on both sides consistently and keeping the Panthers honest that way. And they were consistent even when they weren't converting that stuff at the start. They were consistently getting into good positions though, and then conceded twice, I think, once right at the start and then once sort of closer to halftime. And the kind of moments where maybe you might expect a team that's been struggling to crumble a little bit. I mean, sort of that's an angle I might mention about Melbourne Victory when we talk about the Phoenix as well, is like just rolling with the punches and then coming back stronger. But the Warriors did that too extremely well, where they didn't panic when they conceded, like off an error off the kickoff and then they concede straight away. It's not panic. They still got into their work, and they didn't panic after Jerome Luai sets up and ends up scoring a pretty spectacular long range try, but against the run of play at that point, you could argue as well. But it's just a good, solid, strong performance. And maybe it was the case that just getting a few fresh faces in there was the reset button that they needed, and just to get away from having fallen a bit too much into the Sean Johnson does everything kind of mold. I don't know, but that's kind of how it felt. It felt refreshed, and I think a lot of that was because they had different players with different different players who forced them to play in a different way. But in this case, it wasn't a worse way. It was kind of a beneficial expansion of what they've been trying to achieve.
I think it was Tomato Martin's first kick. It was a crossfield kick that Dallin Watene-Zelezniak catches, or I think he knocks it on in the process of catching it. So Tomato Martin makes a kick, and it's like halfway between the goalpost and the sideline. Dallin Watene-Zelezniak comes infield off his wing to make that catch. That's only happening if it's a design play. But Cooper Cronk was saying it was a terrible kick and it's been a terrible start for the Warriors playmakers. It's like, bro, he just landed a kick on Dallin Watene-Zelezniak's head, and if he catches it, maybe something happens. But during that opening stanza, it was like, oh, the Warriors, they're not taking their opportunities down here. Yeah, it was a bit clunky. You got completely different halves combination. Tomato Martin's kicking game hasn't been good here. He's had 2 mishap kicks. It's like, bro, the first kick was almost caught by the winger. It was a design play. What are you doing? But yeah, well, that's where the frustration kicks in. But I will say, like, these players that are stepping up to continue the storyline, they're good players, like really good players. And this is what I'm saying about the level of talent from Aotearoa. Taine Tuapiki is good at rugby league, and he's going to do a job at fullback. Because in New South Wales Cup, he's doing all the same running stuff, but he's doing all the kicking as well. Like, that is a good player. Leotawa, we know, like, you can put Leotawa up against any young centre from Australia, he's just as good. Sean Stuckle-Klokstad playing number 6. He's the Kiwis fullback, you know, like, he's not a mug. He's a damn good rugby league player. And if you put him in the number 6 jersey, because he did play a lot in the halves, coming through the grades at the Melbourne Storm and with the Warriors, he's going to do the job. Jacob Laban, how old's Jacob Laban? He's 20 years old. How many 20-year-olds are playing how Jacob Laban's playing right now from Australia? And you can see it. You can see the, like, oh, the Warriors, they got some of their squad members, they're coming in, they're going to suck because, you know, players 25 to 30 aren't as good. Yeah, but these young players are good. And they're going to do a job in the NRL. And I think the best performance of them all, I think it was Paul Roach. And because he's the 3rd best hooker at the Warriors right now. You got Wade Egan, Freddie Lussick, Paul Roach. But Paul Roach, he's been playing, like, he plays 60 plus minutes at hooker in New South Wales Cup. He fills in at halfback when he needs to. And then he steps up to the NRL, he's making 37 tackles. He's making the most tackles of all the Warriors. And he's making good tackles. And he's offering crisp distribution. And you heard it. You know, it was quite surprising because Wade Egan, you know, he's not a half. But Cooper Cronk spent the opening 10 minutes saying how important Wade Egan was to the Warriors. I've said it before, but I also know that the other players are good. They can do the job. It's like, whoa, Wade Egan, he's gone. Warriors going to suck. What happens? Paul Roach just comes on, does the job. Like, the Warriors are not calling upon pure reserve graders. Like, these guys aren't part-timers who are just like, oh yeah, we're part of the Warriors, but we don't really care about having a career. No, these players are young players who are going to play a lot of footy for the Warriors or any other NRL team in the future. And I'll say it again, like, most of these young players that the Warriors have are just as good, if not better, than a lot of young Australians as well.
Yeah, Paul Roach was great. He had the triple threat because he was the defensive thing. He's just making his tackles over and over. No one's like skipping past him. The passing was definitely crisp and it was accurate and it was consistent throughout. And also he had a bit of running as well in there too, which like at Wade Egan's best, he's got that for sure. But I don't know if we've seen a lot of that from him this season. Maybe it's because we haven't seen a lot of Wade Egan this season. Might be more to the point. It's less about whether he's been in and out of form. It's more about the fact that he's like concussed every second week, which is kind of concerning when that keeps happening over and over and over. And it's not a case of like, well, Wade Egan gets injured too often, dump him. He literally just re-signed. But it is definitely a case of like, Wade Egan gets injured a lot. We got to have a backup plan. Like, we got to have someone who's not just another guy who can play that role, but someone who can play that role similar to how he does, so that you're not disrupting the team too much. Like Roach did that. It's at least in this game, and that's those small feet. I thought that I agree. I thought that was super impressive. Also, did think Schansnuggle-Klokstad in the halves was fantastic, but like as you said, he's played a lot of halves in reserve grade, and he's just like an international caliber footy player. So like you sort of expect that a little bit more. I think with Roach, it was a bit more. There wasn't necessarily an expectation that he could play that well right now, just so suddenly, and he did, which is a big part of how the Warriors won that game.
Even like obviously Jazz Tavanga was good. I saw Bunty Afoa made all his tackles. Let me get the exact statistic right here. 31 tackles, 100%. Bunty Afoa. Mitchell Barnett, Jackson Ford, Dylan Walker, like all those dudes ripped in. And I think it was a plan for the Warriors to have more Dylan Walker, more Jazz Tavanga running the footy, cutting angles and all that stuff. And even when you saw like doing that stuff instead of Adam Fanua-Blake, because Adam Fanua-Blake, like the Warriors beat the Panthers and Adam Fanua-Blake had 7 runs for 62 meters. But you could see the runs Fanua-Blake did have, there were some funky plays. Like they were putting him out wide, cutting him back into the middle, those type of things to challenge the Panthers defense. So it definitely seemed like a plan. Like people seem to hate Tamaita Martin. I don't really understand. He's just a really good player, and people seem to love Luke Metcalf, maybe because he's Australian, and that's just what everyone loves to do. Oh, we got a player from Australia, let's love him. They, like, prior to this game, my eye test was that they just do the same thing. So I don't know how you can say one's better than the other. Like, Metcalf is fast. Martin's a better defender. Martin's a better passer. I think Martin has better footwork. Let's check in with their stats. Luke Metcalf, 55 meters per game. Tamaita Martin, 74 meters per game. They got pretty much the same tackling. 86.2% for Martin, 89% for Luke Metcalf. So you can't really say that Martin's a better tackler than Metcalf, like whatever, that's all good. But my hypothesis is that they just do the same role. So you can't say because the Warriors were losing, even though they lost 2 games with Luke Metcalf playing in the halves before he had 2 wins, like there's this perception that Luke Metcalf is just way better than Tamaita Martin, and Tamaita Martin sucks. It's like, I don't know. But Tamaita Martin was good in this game. He had 3 try assists, I think, and the Warriors scored 4 tries. So he was instrumental with that, doing what he does best, passing the footy. The subtle passing, putting other blokes into space. But I believe the Tamaita Martin versus Luke Metcalf battle kind of papers over the wider idea here, which is regardless of who's playing number 6, they're playing second fiddle to Shaun Johnson. And with Shaun Johnson doing all the kicking, getting all the touches, the Warriors weren't winning. So, and I think in this game, there are a few more offloads. There was some funky, like, you just give the ball to Schansnuggle-Klokstad on the left and you say, have a run, take the opportunity. You get Tamaira Martin the footy on the other edge or any edge, and you say, get some bodies around him, let him pick the right pass. And as we predicted, the Warriors had to play a funkier style of footy without Shaun Johnson, and it worked while the Shaun Johnson style was not working. And that's something just to keep tabs on. The Warriors are better with Shaun Johnson in the team, but if he's doing everything, we've seen how that plays out already this season. There was a Kiwi-NRL debut at Magic Round. Josiah Karapani made his debut for the Broncos, and he looked pretty good. Pretty. It was a tough defensive situation for Karapani because he was defending on a new edge with Corey Oates, and I think they had Ezra Mam there as well. So they all missed a few tackles, and it was a tough defensive assignment up against the Seagulls, especially when you got Haumole Olakau'atu running rampant at edge forward. And Josiah Karapani's, all his Queensland Cup footy for Burleigh Bears was on the wing. So he was playing on the wing in Queensland Cup, and he was playing so good on the wing in Queensland Cup that he earned his NRL debut at centre, which I thought was pretty interesting. But it goes to show how important being able to play wing and centre is in getting opportunities. Because you only need to look at his teammate, Dean Mariner, also from Auckland, where Dean Mariner, coming through the grades, he was a centre. Now he's playing on the wing in the NRL. Josiah Karapani has usually been a centre. He did play number 6 in the New Zealand under-18s clubs versus schools game back in 2020, but I think he also played wing for the Warriors SG Ball team to start 2020, but then coming through the ranks for the Rabbitohs, he was a centre. But then he was playing on the wing for Burleigh, and then he played centre in the NRL. So if you can play both those positions, you're going to get some game time. Whereas if you're a specialist winger or you're a specialist centre, your chances of getting game time decrease. So you need to be able to play both. Well, you don't need to, but it's a good way to ensure that you get some NRL game time, because every NRL team needs dudes who can play centre and wing without much of a drop-off. And Karapani was pretty good. He's a very robust runner. Quite similar, I think, to KL Iro. Whereas someone like Dean Mariner is faster and has the balance and intuition that makes him very good for the wing, whereas Karapani is very robust, very powerful, got good footwork, and he's also very skillful. Like, don't overlook how skillful he is. He was his background, he went to Pakuranga College, and I think he started with East Tamaki Rugby Union, to the best of my knowledge. Then he goes to Pakuranga College, and he's from Otara, and he starts to play rugby league. So then he starts to appear with Otahuhu, and he makes a few, I think he made the under-17 counties team, gets into New Zealand Rugby League camps. Then he joins the Warriors SG Ball team. Of course, that gets destroyed by the pandemic. Warriors lose over half their junior roster spots, so there's less opportunities. Then Karapani goes to the Rabbitohs, and this is where things got pretty damn funky, because he stopped appearing for the Rabbitohs 3/4 of the way through last season. Then suddenly over the summer, he appears with the Broncos, and now he's made an NRL debut with the Broncos. And given the state of the Rabbitohs, where would you rather be? I'd rather be battling for a selection with the Broncos than whatever the Rabbitohs are up to. So that was a good move for Karapani, however it came to be, and now he's made his Kiwi-NRL debut. 4 Kiwi-NRL debutants this year. Jacob Laban from Wellington. Te Aroha Jr. also went to Randwick, then moved up to Auckland, where he went to Kelston Boys High School. Zion Mai'uu, Te Attitude Jr., I think. He went to Kelston Boys High School as well. Solomon Alaimalo from Christchurch. Hornby Jr. with the Tigers. And now Josiah Karapani. I don't have any confirmation that Josiah Karapani was playing first 15 for Pakuranga College. For those who don't know, Pakuranga College isn't really a relevant footy school. Rugby league players have come out of Pakuranga College, especially recently, but they don't have a dominant first 15 team. They don't have a dominant rugby league team. And in fact, I'd say Karapani made their rugby league team relevant. But he did play junior rugby union. So all 4 of the Kiwi-NRL debutants this year played rugby union. Laban played first 15 for St. Bernard's College, as well as Kelston Boys, where he played alongside Zion Mai'uu. Josiah Karapani was playing rugby union before he switched to rugby league. And Solomon Alaimalo, he played first 15 for St. Bede's College in Christchurch before pursuing the Super Rugby career as well. I mean, Broncos, one of the funkiest Kiwi-NRL teams at the moment. Mariner, Karapani, Jordan Ricky, and of course Jesse Arthurs. Can't forget Jesse Arthurs, because what does he do? He plays wing and centre. Need to have that skill set. But of course, you got Xavier Willison as well. So now we're getting into the Taharoa connection, because Taintua Piki and Tamare Martin are from Taharoa. So is Xavier Willison. So this small little village, apparently Wikipedia says they got less than 200 people in this village on the west coast. It's produced 3 NRL players playing at the same time. Seems pretty impressive. So I am loving the Kiwi-NRL Broncos. The ladder, you got Sharks, Storm, Panthers, Dolphins, Broncos, Raiders, Roosters, Knights. Loving the Raiders. They had a big haka in celebration of their history, their premiership winners back in the day. And of course, with Quinton Pongia passing away, mentioned the Broncos, talked a lot about the Dolphins as well over the past few weeks. Yeah, we've talked a lot about the Sharks and the Storm. So good Kiwi-NRL stuff happening there. You got any final thoughts on Magic Round? Of course, big win for the Dragons.
Yeah, 2 points in the bag. Got to beat that biting. You always got to do that. I mean, I think, yeah, one other thought of that. Because, you know, wherever the Warriors go in Australia, like there's the narrative, which is completely true narrative about how good their crowds have been at home. Even when they've been, you know, struggling this season, they're still getting big crowds. Off the back of this one, I expect we're back in sellout territory. But they also are surely the most the most supported other team in Australia. Like there's all the Kiwi expats always turn up, and you just knew at Magic Round they would probably, like, if I don't know how you work this out scientifically, but if I had to guess, I would say it would be the Broncos with the most supported team at Magic Round, quite obviously. Like that one goes without saying, it's at their stadium. You could argue the Warriors were next. Like you could argue the Warriors might have had more of a crowd than like Cowboys and Titans and Redcliffe, even arguably. At least that's how it felt during that Panthers game, which I think is also exacerbated by the fact that the Warriors were playing against the Panthers. So like the neutrals wanted the Panthers to lose, because that's what you do when a team's won like 3 premierships in a row. You cheer against them because it's fun for the competition. And that made the Warriors into a fun underdog against the defending champs. And then, yeah, I don't know, the crowd bounce hasn't quite worked for them in terms of performances at home yet this season, which is it's a weird twist. But it felt like it was definitely a relevant part of the performance in Magic Round. Is they had a buzz. There was a, like, you know how the last second kick with the penalty where Penrith can tie it up and take it into Golden Point. And I think it was Dylan Edwards who slices it wide. The reason I knew it missed was because the crowd before.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say just after Adam Pompey smashed what's his name in the ribs and made him spew up. Yeah. Right after that happened. I didn't even see that live. I saw that afterwards. I saw the clip of it afterwards. I must have been looking away for that one split shot of him just like erupting. Like it wasn't even a little bit of like it wasn't even like a cough and a little bit of spittle. It's like his entire gut came flying out there. That was quite disgusting, actually. But especially because when you think about, there was like 2 more games to go afterwards. Like I hope someone rushed on and at least tried to clean that up. spray it with the water bottles or something. But yeah, no, the reason I knew that kick had missed was because the crowd started celebrating before it had even reached the goalpost because they could see the trajectory was taken it wide. So I think the crowd factor there was also a big one for the Warriors, and hopefully that does flow on into the weeks on end after this.
Just on the yak, which everyone wants to hear about, like we can say, oh yeah, it's kind of disgusting for a player to yak on the field and then play 2 games after, but we can't pretend like all the players don't spit and blow their boogers all over the field as well. Like
bit of blood as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, like the players are already putting all their fluids on the field. I don't see much difference between that and a big old yak, which is a disgusting topic of conversation. And I'll bring it back by saying, I'll sum up everything you just said. The Warriors boost every Australian team's crowd. They might not want to talk about it. Aussies might not want to talk about it. But when the Warriors are playing in Australia against any NRL team, they will get a bigger crowd than they usually do. Warriors are good for business. How about that? Let's
good transition into the Phoenix on the back of crowd sizes there too.
Well, that's a positive, you know. Big crowds for the Wellington Phoenix, and you highlighted this in our newsletter yesterday. That was the second Wellington Phoenix home game with over 30,000 people. It was the highest, 33,297. So it was a big crowd for the Wellington Phoenix. You probably would have seen it because there were no yellow seats and the crowd shot behind you. It's all black. So that was interesting. Like they didn't go yellow, but that was good because you couldn't see the yellow seats. And
yeah, there were some yellow jerseys at times where I'm like, is that an empty seat or is that a person? Yeah. I think usually it was a person, but then also sometimes it's like straight after halftime, there are yellow seats because obviously the concession lines are very full at that time and at any ground that you go to. But yeah, it's huge crowd. It's a sellout crowd, like capacity crowd.
I think Mount Smart, they changed the color of the seats. Now the seats are blue. Where
they're blue instead of yellow.
Yeah, and I think the Cape Town needs to do that. Like, if you're going to have the Wellington Phoenix, and if it's Wellington, so it makes sense to have yellow seats. But all the teams there wear yellow, so the fans will wear yellow. Whether it's the Hurricanes, the Phoenix, or whoever else, like just get some black seats, and then everyone wears yellow, and it pops out a lot more. One other detail I'll say. This was a big moment for the Phoenix because there were no closed off areas of the stadium. So to get 33,000 people, you need to open every little pocket of the stadium. I'm not willing to say that the Phoenix have now joined the Warriors in not having closed sections of the stadium because throughout the season, they do close off sections of the stadium. But for this game, they were there with the Warriors. So big up the Phoenix and their fans. And then, like this is genuinely the case. You watch the Blues at Eden Park. Big crowd last week. This week, they got sections of Eden Park closed off. The Black Ferns, New Zealand's national women's rugby team. They're playing in front of one stand. And shout out, that stand was full because you couldn't get into any other stand because they were all closed off. And we've said it before, say it again. We know why this is happening. Like these stadiums, they want to save money. You save on security guards and having to manage the areas of the stadium. But you can tell the strength of any New Zealand sports team. Not by the crowd size, because this is the crowd size. It is a factor. But the more important thing is, are there any sections of the stadium closed? The Warriors, that doesn't happen. I'm not really seeing it in NBL. Like those arenas are smaller, so that makes sense. But I'm not really seeing it to NBL. Credit to netball. Not seeing it too much in netball. But I haven't watched every netball game of the Premiership. You see it a lot in rugby. You see a lot of closed off sections of stadiums in rugby. And we've seen it for the Wellington Phoenix before, but we didn't see it this weekend. So the Phoenix have they've moved up to the Warriors realms, but again, there's no closed off sections at any Warriors game. No matter whether it's in Auckland, Christchurch, Napier, Hamilton, that doesn't happen. Back to the Phoenix. Big crowd, fantastic game. Oscar Zavada scored the pretty epic goal. And the Phoenix lost. I don't know what you want to say. I've got a question, but it's about Zavada and his departure. So you might just want to wax lyrical about the moment, the game, anything else.
Well, the crowd, I'll say, was the biggest of the A-League season. Like for any team this season, that was the biggest crowd. It won't be beaten in the grand final either because Central Coast are hosting the grand final at the Source Bottle Stadium. So that's smaller capacity than what this one has. They cannot beat it.
Wait. You snuck that in there. The Source Bottle Stadium.
You haven't seen Central Coast.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
with the big old mustard bottle.
That's it.
Yeah, that's the one. But you snuck that in there, so let's make it known.
Source Bottle and Palm Trees. It's actually quite a nice little cider there, stadium. Even though it is a lovely stadium and it's quite coastal there, I think as well. Like that's the side that opens out towards the coast. You could argue that's a closed off section of the stadium, though. You know, there's no seats there. There's no one gets to sit in a hammock off between the trees or anything, which would be a great sight. But
that reminds me
might
of
be in trouble for some of those shots.
It reminds me of Albany, the North Harbour Stadium, because you can't have any closed off sections in North Harbour because there's only one grandstand. It is one of the weirdest stadiums in New Zealand, and I think the Auckland Stadium situation is ridiculous because you've got three different stadiums that all kind of do weird stuff. And you look at some of the stadiums in Australia, the Melbourne Stadium, Melbourne Victory Stadium, that's an epic football stadium. Rugby league, football. Auckland is three of them for no reason at all. And you've got that atrocity in Albany, an atrocity because there's one grandstand.
Well, there's the one big one with the roof, and there's a sort of smaller one opposite that doesn't have a roof. But like, they often, speaking of closed off sections, they often don't sell that part. But then sometimes, I don't know, sometimes it's weird because they want people sitting on the small one instead of the covered one because the TV cameras go on the other side. So you don't want it to look like there's no one there. But yeah, that's the other angle of how they try to pack people into certain sections, because it does look better if you have at least the bit that's on TV covered, but then also a spread out thing over more is still going to make more noise because there's more people. They're not as tightly crammed in. So the problem with those Auckland stadiums is none of them are quite fit for purpose for anything. Like none of them are specialty. They're all trying to be jack of all trade things, which is, I'd say, similar things about the Cake Tin as well, to be honest. Like you're quite far away if you're sitting on halfway for a football game or a rugby game, same size field. You're quite far away on halfway, where that should really be the best seats. Like it's not ideal when you're trying to make a ground that can also fit a cricket game in there, even though you end up with a weird cricket game because it's too small to, you can't, it's one of those, like, you can't please everyone, but then somehow we've just got this situation with hybrid stadiums all across the land. It's a very strange one. But then you get, like, for cricket, for example, you get some of these, like Hagley Oval is a great example, Mount Maunganui as well, like these more specific, almost you could say boutique, but they are specific to these sports. Great grounds to go watch sports at, like fantastic, because they're built for that experience. And these other ones are just sort of, well, we need to be able to play rugby, cricket, and football here, and it's going to lead to some weird dimensions. Like there's, yeah, but not to mention the fact that they keep, whenever they decide, should we build a new stadium or should we just do up this one and make it even more of a Frankenstein's monster? Let's go with Frankenstein monster. That decision has been made so many times.
I do like Mount Smart, but like Eden Park and Albany, they are huge concrete things.
Yeah.
Like, can't we just like tighten it up and have a smaller, more dynamic stadium? But I think the killer blow here is that you got the Cake Tin that's trying to be everything. Down the road, you got the Basin Reserve, the best cricket arena in New Zealand, maybe the world, right there. So we're trying to do cricket at the Cake Tin, and we got the Basin Reserve right there. Doesn't make much sense. However, we're talking about the Wellington Phoenix. So the football, like, I'll sum it up, because to me, it felt like a not your day performance from the Wellington Phoenix.
Yeah.
Like, you had Ben Old smacking the post, a few other things, the penalty save. And I was thinking about, okay, some of the biggest moments New Zealand sport recently, which is actually quite a tortured exercise.
The losses in there, unfortunately.
We're not winning a whole lot. We are the best sporting nation in the world because we are world class in so many different sports. But we're not winning a whole lot recently. But I think, like, the Black Caps, that World Cup loss in England, so much went wrong that it was like, oh, it's just not your day. It's not meant to be here. The Warriors last season, they lost to the Panthers. They lost to the Broncos. They were thoroughly outplayed. So in that sense, it's like, you're not good enough to win the NRL Grand Final. So you see the difference there? Like, the football ferns, okay, they're playing Norway. Bang, everything's gone well. That is your opportunity. You're playing the Philippines, and that was such a horrible viewing experience because you got the sense the football ferns weren't going to win. You got the sense they weren't going to score. It didn't feel like that was the day for the football ferns. And I think that's the situation for the Phoenix. To me, it was like two good teams, and it's just not your day. There's a winner, there's a loser. You take it on the chin, and somehow you keep it moving, which I think for the Wellington Phoenix, although you can never assume that young players are going to back it up the next season. You can't assume that. So you got to hope for it, but you can't assume it. But I think the future is quite bright for the Wellington Phoenix, given the structure and system they have in place. And I'll get into it right now. Like, I saw some of the reaction about Oscar Zavada and his possible departure at the end of the season. Season's ended now, so his departure. He scored that goal. Epic goal. I don't think he's like... I don't think he's irreplaceable.
You don't think he's Sean Johnson?
Yeah, like, he didn't play every game this season, and the Phoenix were awesome. The Phoenix were awesome without him. So it's going to be a blow to lose Oscar Zavada, but I know there's more young players. There's more imports. There's, I don't think he's, and even in the final, he came off the bench. Like, this is not a talismanic striker. It's a good striker who scores goals, does his job, and he's replaceable.
Yeah, he could have been a talismanic striker if he'd stayed fit, but he didn't stay fit. The best ability is availability, as the saying goes. He played less than 25% of the minutes this season. It was like 22.4 or so. I can't remember exactly. I looked it up, but less than 25%, definitely. Second top goal scorer in the squad. Only Costa Barbarousa scored more than him. So in that count, like, I think 7 goals in 600 minutes or something like that is an outstanding response, including, one of the most famous goals now in Phoenix history. Would have been more famous if they'd gone on to win that game, obviously. But so even still, it was just an incredible moment. And, one of those feelings that you get very, 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 very rarely in sports. But when they happen, it's like nothing else could have provided this. Like, nothing else quite matches this moment right here. Unfortunately, didn't get to turn that into a result. But, that's because of what you were saying of there's two very, very, very evenly matched teams who are both quite defensive-minded, and there's just not a lot in that formula to break open the game. So, like, if the Phoenix had been better in the way that the Broncos last year in the semifinals were better than the Warriors, if the Phoenix has been better to that extent, then, yeah, you can say, like, you can have judgments one way or another about the performance or the deservedness or whatever, but when it's just that close, one team has to win and one team has to lose. And unfortunately, I think experience did play a big role in this. I think the Phoenix not being a particularly experienced team on this stage, it's not that they were big. Well, I mean, they missed a penalty, so there was at least one big moment that went astray. But like, it's the same with Kraev had a header that he missed early in the second half. Ben Old hit the post. The Rufer penalty miss as well. We'll put that in there too. Those are three big moments while it was still 0-0. Like, while the game was still more in the balance, the Zavada one at the end was a big moment, but it was kind of like just desperation. I mean, how often do you see the Phoenix lumping a ball from defense over the top, flick on header, strikers running through? Like, that's just Route 1 football that they only did because they were in that situation of just desperation, seconds to go. It's partly why it was so special, is because it was so out of character. It's just, this is not how they play, but they had to. While the game was still in the proper arm wrestle phases, they just, it's not that they were bad, it's just that someone had to do something above and beyond to take the game, to take control of the game, and the Phoenix didn't. They were close, they had the chances, just no one turned a half chance into a wonder goal or something until Adama Traore did it for Melbourne victory with an excellent finish. Like that, there were like three chances exactly like that fell to the Phoenix. A couple to Sam Sutton, and I think one to Ben Old was a bit after that in extra time. But like little volleys or just loose ball fall into a dude edge of the box, and they just try to smash it. And the victory guys scored his. The Phoenix guys didn't. Like, that is kind of the difference in the day. That, and also after the miracle of taking it to extra time, the Phoenix lapsed off a corner. Again, when do you ever see that? Like, the Phoenix got beat into the first ball. First contact at the near post, flicks it on, and then the guy's wriggled free of his marker at the back post, like 2 headers in a row. You just don't see that from the Wellington Phoenix. It's a rarity. And a lot of the game after they conceded, so during extra time, and then sort of the 10 minutes plus stoppage time leading up to the Zavada goal and regulation time, you also saw the Phoenix whipping in heaps of crosses and doing that sort of long ball, getting into the mix of stuff, which again is not their identity. It's not how they play. Kind of forced upon them by the situation. So I don't want to be like they've betrayed what got them here. I don't want to be harsh on that. I think they kind of just didn't have a choice, but they didn't have a choice because they conceded the first goal. The first goal was so crucial in this game, and victory, being able to do that, being able to be the team that took that rare chance, that took that half chance, and then also being able to respond and pick themselves up to score again after conceding that Zavada goal, I think is massive and incredibly impressive from them. And an experience which Giancarlo Italiano kind of said, well, this is now the making of this team to an extent. Like, this Phoenix team knows what it requires through the kind of experience you can really only gain firsthand. Is why they say you got to lose one before you can win one. There's just nothing else. You can't simulate a knockout game of this magnitude. You just can't. You've either played in them before or you haven't. So this is motivation for the Phoenix. It's also just like a technical lesson of what the levels have to be. You lapse off from that one corner, the one opportunity victory had in the extra time period, and you lose. Like, that's how a good team can punish you in these things. Phoenix weren't as punishing, weren't as ruthless. Would they have been that if Zavada had been able to play 120 minutes? Maybe, like throughout the season. I mean, if Zavada had been a lot more fit through the season, I think they probably win the minor premiership, because there's a few more of those draws that could have been turned into wins. But he wasn't. And he is an injury-prone player. And I think, like, talent-wise, if he's leaving, which I guess he is, he wanted to leave last summer, which I think there's a lot of, he's leaving, he must be going to Auckland kind of chat. Like, maybe, they've probably got some money behind them, but also, when he wanted to leave 12 months ago, it was like Dutch clubs and European sides basically that he was angling towards. And I think there's still a lot more money in Europe than there is in the A-League, especially at the time of the A-League are probably cutting funding. Like, if he leaves, I expect that's where he goes, back closer to home. He has had a child born since he was living here as well. So I look, like, it's talent-wise, you probably can't do much better than getting an import striker like Oscar Zavada, who's that good at finishing, that good of a hold-up player. But like, that also comes with a why is he playing in the A-League tag, which for him is probably fitness related. So okay, there's a lot more Oscar Zavadas in world football where that came from. Replacing and I think that because Chiefy kind of hinted that they only had enough money to be able to sign one of Zavada or Costa Barbarouses. As far as I see it, replacing an import striker is a lot easier than replacing a local striker of the ability of Costa Barbarouses in the season he just had and the experience he brings as one of the few guys in this team who knows about those levels, who knows about what it takes to win these finals games. You've got to sign Costa every day of the week, which sounds like they will have. And then if that means sacrifice Sabata, okay, you back the scouting team to find someone else. And the same goes with guys like Ben Old, Alex Paulson, Finn Sermon. I think Sam Sutton in the last couple of months might have put himself into a very similar category as well. I thought he was excellent in this in both games against Victory. Like, if one or two or three or maybe even all four of these guys leaves, the whole point of having an academy is that it replenishes itself. Like, the whole point of that is that you're built to develop and then sell those guys and then use that money to fund the squad moving forward and help develop more guys who can come up and just take their place. Like, you could have said the same thing about how do you replace Sarpreet Singh? How do you replace Libby Kikache? Well, they've got a crop of dudes right now who were of a similar standard to what those guys were when they left. Maybe a little bit less than Kikache. I think Kikache is a bit of a special generational talent, the way he just turned up as like an 18-year-old at the first team and played like a 35-year-old veteran with that kind of like just that level of expertise. But that's the point of the academy. That is basically the business model that the Phoenix are trying to run by. Is we develop players, we sell them, we bring in the next guys.
A couple of these Phoenix players, they do have the glorious honor of taking on Newcastle United. Who gives a shit about that? Chris Wood. I've seen this, he's top 70 for Premier League goals. So shout out to him, top 70. His company, Eric Cantona, Luis Suarez, who apparently Bruno Fornaroli is good mates with Luis Suarez. I did see that. And also, I meant to bring this up a few weeks ago or some other time. Lots of Rolly Bonifacia.
Yeah.
For the past few weeks for Melbourne Victory. So that was it was good to see old Rolly still in action. Not good to see him beat the Phoenix. What else is tickling your fancy on the Flying Kiwis beat? We've got some highlights. Riley Bidouin scored a nice little chip. We've got Gabi Rennie scoring more goals. Matt Dibley-Dias. Break down Matt Dibley-Dias. What has Matt Dibley-Dias been up to?
Well, just quickly, I've mentioned that Gabi Rennie has now, I think, 3 goals and 4 assists, I think it is. Or it might be the other way around, 4 goals, 3 assists. I think it's 3 goals, 4 assists in 6 or 7 games or something like that for Ireland United. She scored in 3 games in a row. That literally matches 3 goals and 4 assists, her 4-year tally at college. So she's already a better professional than she was in 4 years at college. It's nice. Just ramping it up when it comes to getting those paychecks. It's beautiful. That's exactly the right timing for her as well. But I mentioned that last couple of weeks because she keeps scoring. Matt Dibley-Dias plays for a Fulham under-21s team that came 3rd in the Premier League 2 competition, which is like under-21s Premier League academies. There's 2 divisions of it, and they're in the top division, and they came 3rd. So the 3rd best academy team over the league season. And there's also like a cup competition that they play with a little group stage and then into knockouts. They won that. They didn't just win that. They got through their sort of group stage, which a lot of that was actually while Dibley-Dias was injured. They beat Middlesbrough 2-1 in the round of 16. They played Crystal Palace, Premier League club, in the quarterfinals, beat them 3-0. They played Chelsea, Premier League club with a lot of money. In the semi-finals, beat them 4-0. They played Tottenham Hotspur, Premier League club, a lot of money. Good, very good academy too. Like, beat them 4-0 in the final. So they weren't just winning these games, they were thrashing teams, and they were thrashing teams that probably are expected to be better than Fulham, which just shows you what a good crop of players they've got right now at the under-21s level. Matt Dibley-Dias is the captain of that team. So when they handed them the trophy, he lifted that trophy. He set up a goal in the final, but playing as like a defensive midfielder a bit more in the last few months since he's come back from the injury that stopped him debuting for the All Whites. Little bit more defensive minded, so he hasn't had the same like sort of goals and assists highlights that he had earlier, but he did get an assist in this final, pressing up on halfway, tackling the opposition captain, taking the ball off him, and then just feeding it forward to the striker who ran through and scored. This is clearly an extremely good and talented Fulham under-21s team, and Matt Dibley-Dias is the dude who has been highlighted as the leader amongst a can't say golden generation because you don't know what that's going to be like until they get through into actually playing some first team games. He's popped up on the bench for Fulham in Premier League games, the last 2 games of last season and the first couple, I think, of this season. And I've been sort of keeping my eye out of the last month. Is that going to happen again now that we're at that same stage? Does he pop up on a bench, maybe even get a sneaky debut in the Premier League? Fulham not battling relegation or anything, comfortably mid-table. Didn't happen. I think maybe it didn't happen because they were focusing on these under-21 games and saying, rather than giving you 5 minutes at the end of a Premier League game, let's try win a trophy, get you 90 minutes every game, and then next season after, you'll come with us on preseason, and that's where it went with them on preseason last year and got some first team minutes there, unofficial, but still something. Having said that, preseason, Fulham could clash with Olympic football, which he's obviously eligible for as well. And we'll been hoping for a couple of years that might be the one where Matt Dibley-Dias finally represents New Zealand in the game would be at these Olympics. We'll see. We'll see. I know there's dialogue because he got called up into an All White squad. He was there with the All Whites before he pulled out with injury. He trained a few times, so he's committed. He's there and thereabouts. It's just about what's going to mesh up with his club stuff. And might have to check what that Fulham preseason schedule looks like, because hopefully he's available for those Olympics, because if he is, he's going to be a key player.
Surely Fulham would want their young footballers playing on the global stage against, the best players in the world for their age group. So let's assume he plays
for a big tournament, you'd hope so. And France are in our group, so he might be playing against Kylian Mbappe or something if he's one of their overage players, which might well happen because Neymar was an overage player for Brazil when Brazil hosted the Olympics, because as host you kind of want to win the thing, right? And hopefully we get Dibley-Dias and whoever else just shutting down Mbappe, and then I don't know, Ollie White's gold medal too much to ask. We've talked about New Zealand sporting failures for maybe a silver medal and they lose in extra time or something. I'll accept that. I think I can deal with that.
That'll probably be around the same time that the Tall Blacks, that would be after the Tall Blacks beat Luka Doncic and Giannis Antetokounmpo and whatnot. Also, I did see Matt Garbutt pop up in our highlights. What's Matt Garbutt up to?
The Matt Garbutt story is awesome. Not necessarily for Matt Garbutt, but that remains to be seen, because NSA Breda was slumping their way towards the promotion playoffs and slowly slipping down the table slightly. It's are they going to hold on to the bottom spot of the qualification sort of cutoff? They did by goal difference after winning only one of their last 8 games of the league season. And Matt Garbutt, that was the one game that they won, was the one game he didn't start. So that was not a great omen. They just played Roda JC, former club at Ivan Visilic once upon a time, in the first round of the promotion playoffs. Roda JC 2 weeks ago had their fans storm onto the field at full time of a game which they'd won, thinking that they'd earned automatic promotion, only to find out that there'd been a very, very late goal in Groningen's game with one of the other matches, which meant that they still had to get a result against Groningen the next week. And they lost 2-0, which meant Groningen got the automatic spot. So the fans had stormed onto the field to celebrate promotion, and they didn't get promotion. So they had to go through the playoffs. And I don't know, maybe it's just an emotional hangover or something like that. They were very surprisingly beaten 3-1 by Breda in the first round. Garbutt playing off the bench, which is, played off the bench, and then he played off the bench in the second game, which means the last 3 times they've won have been the 3 times that he didn't play. But Garbutt also did come off the bench and set up a goal in the second leg, which was the away leg, which was the one where people were okay, Roda had this bad game. They've had a few setbacks. They're going to bounce back and smash this out of form team. Instead, they lost 5-0, which is a complete capitulation. There were twice they had to pause the game because the home crowd were throwing beer bottles or beer cups onto the, plastic cups onto the field. But bottom line is that Roda JC did not get promoted. and NAC Breda are through to the semi-finals of promotion, and we'll play on Wednesday and then I think Saturday morning to try and stay alive in that one. So Matty Garbs is hoping to get promoted to the Eredivisie.
Let's roll through a couple of other bits and pieces from the weekend. There was a big old heavyweight boxing bout between Mr. Fury and Mr. Usyk, which Mr. Usyk won. And that event also featured David Nyika, and he had a victory. And it also had Joseph Parker loitering. Apparently part of the coverage. Didn't see the coverage, but you have a little screenshot of Mr. Parker enjoying the festivities in the Middle East. This is a very interesting stage for boxing, I reckon, because Joseph Parker's on the up, but now you've also got David Nyika getting a few more. He's on the up and up as well. Not to mention Hemi Ahio had a victory in recent weeks off the top of my head. Not sure if you know any more about that.
Yeah, I think he might have, but I can't remember. I didn't see it, but I can look it up.
We'll touch on David Nyika and what happened there.
Yeah, so David Nyika, he took on a fellow called Michael Seitz, German cruiserweight. This is cruiserweight division that Nyika is trying to move himself up in. And this was probably his toughest test yet. But he's at that stage of his career where like none of them have been tough tests. So he comes up against a dude who had an unbeaten record, but who also like a lot of short fights, only had a couple that went beyond 4 rounds. You say similar about Nyika, but obviously we know what a sort of pedigreed amateur career he had prior to going professional. So fights the Seitz fella. Obviously, how does he get onto the Saudi onto a Saudi card? Well, that's quite obvious. That's quite easy to solve. That's mates with Joseph Parker, who's mates with Tyson Fury. Done. Like he's trained with those two before, so obviously there are connections. Even though Nyika these days is fighting out of Queensland with can't remember what the fella's name is. His trainer, I wrote it in the thing. I keep wanting to say Nigel Thornberry, but I think it's Noel Thornberry. Nigel Thornberry. I'm sure it'd be a good. I'm sure he'd be a good boxing trainer though.
Just quickly,
or actually, Donnie would probably be better, but whatever.
Donnie Thornberry.
Yeah, who I found out years after that show was ever on was actually voiced by Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which makes total sense.
Hemi Ahio defeated Lucas Brown. I think that might have been last weekend before, May 13th.
He did? How did I not hear about this more?
And Lucas Brown retired after that. So shout out.
Okay.
Lucas Brown, who actually looks like the Mountain of Game of Thrones after he was brought back to life.
Yeah, who kind of ended Junior Far's career. And did you read that thing about Junior Far? There was a story about him a couple of weeks ago, which was super interesting. How he's like his like entire life has changed now. He's gone vegan and he's retired from boxing because there's too much violence in it. And I think he's like walked away from the Mormon church and is pursuing different faiths and like all this. He's obviously had a bit of a, I don't know, he's been listening to our mindfulness segments. He's had a bit of a reckoning or something, but it was super interesting. Like it shows a very thoughtful bloke.
All I'll say is those things appear when you start losing. And sports is win or lose. So that's what that is. Also, that is true. Just to scatter the seagulls, we've had a football fern squad as well. So what I'll say is we might touch on the football fern squad to face Japan. They're playing Japan in Spain. We might break that down on our subscriber podcast on Thursday. The only name that I don't know is Murphy Sheaf. Murphy Sheaf is just trying to find the thing myself, but Murphy Sheaf is a goalkeeper who's doing the sort of college football thing at the moment. She's been around youth international teams. She's pretty good. Like, I think she was raised in Australia, I think is her. But she's definitely, this isn't her first time in a football fern squad, although she hasn't been played. I think she has been called up as like a third string backup goalkeeper when someone else has been injured in the past.
But yeah,
Well,
they
let's get
can't
back
be
to
dropping football fern squads on us 3/4 of the way through a podcast. And
yeah,
they can't be doing that. So we'll save that for later on.
especially because I don't think there's a lot of crossover between boxing fans and football fans. So we'll just hold the football fans. That's a plug for our subscriber podcast on Thursday. We'll be previewing the Warriors game. We won't be previewing the Phoenix game because they're not playing anymore. We'll be digesting this football fan squad and any other major New Zealand sporting topics on our subscriber podcast on Thursday via Patreon and Substack. David Nyika, he's not being coached by Nigel Thornberry or any other fictional Thornberry
or any other Nickelodeon characters.
I definitely hope not. I pray to God that David Nyika is not involved with Nickelodeon, but he did have a win, so carry on.
Yeah, he did have a win. It was a good sort of confident win where the dude, it's what, you know, when you fight these like journeyman types, even a dude who is undefeated, but he fought like a journeyman because he kind of knew that he was outmatched, and he just rushed the first round, like just rushing heaps of punches. It's get at him because I know I don't have any gas in the tank to go beyond a couple. Like he was exhausted after 1.5 rounds without really hurting Nyika at all. He caught him a couple times, but Nyika kind of like wore it on the chin or whatever, to the extent where I kind of wondered, and I think the commentary might have said something similar, like sort of just looks like he's goading him forward. Like he's encouraging this guy to come at him. He's letting him hit him once or twice in order to open him up for a few counters and just like tire him out and then work him over. Just basically what happened. He tired him out. He worked him over. Towards the end of the 4th round, he ended him, but he didn't even like. It wasn't like the 9th round of Fury versus Usyk, where Fury's bouncing from rope to rope and Usyk's just landing clean shots over and over. Nyika hardly got him. Like it was one of those technical knockout by exhaustion type things. Like he hit him a few times. There's probably a few that felt a lot harder than they looked, but it wasn't like he caught him on the ropes with like a 4, 5, 6 punch combo or anything like that. It wasn't like the power shot came out. He just wore him down to the point where there was no resistance left and the rest stopped the fight. So another good solid win for Nyika, who is starting to get a little bit of a name for himself, particularly fighting on a card like this and having an impressive performance. As there was, Jaya Pataya, the Australian cruiserweight, was fighting later on, a few fights after him, in a fairly significant cruiserweight battle. Like that's the kind of company you want to be keeping, same division, same card, get your name known a little bit. He's not near fighting a dude like that, although Opataya actually was in big trouble towards the end against like a 39-year-old Latvian. He was cruising in the fight. He'd won all the rounds to a point, and then he just suddenly started getting battered, but he held on for the points victory. So, Nyika's, he's not there yet, but he's edging himself closer towards a bit of contention and some tougher, more difficult fights at some stage in the future. But right now, it's just about building his profile, and that was another significant step forward for him on the weekend.
What is a big thing from the past week in the NBL? We've got, just to set it up for you, we've got the Tuatara, they're still first. I think they had a couple week wins over the weekend. Canterbury Rams 7-2, Wellington Saints 7-2, Taranaki Airs 7-3, and then we've got Franklin Bulls 7-3. There's a big drop off between those 5 teams and the next team, Hawke's Bay, who are 4-5. So you've only got 5 teams out of the 11 with winning records, and they've all got pretty decent winning records. Seems like that is the big Donny landscape of New Zealand basketball, to be honest. The Tuatara, Canterbury Rams, Wellington Saints, even Taranaki Airs, they've always been there or thereabouts. And Franklin Bulls, pretty damn impressive themselves, whether it's a player, team, result, thing. What's your big takeaway from the past week of NBL basketball?
Well, I'm selling all my Otago Nugget stock. I was hoping for them for a while. Like I kept looking at them and thinking, that's, especially with the Perth Wildcat connections, like that's a good team that should be that's capable of putting some wins together. But it kind of hasn't clicked. And now Ty Webster, I think, has left for the foreseeable future because his wife is expecting their first child. which is also, I think, the reason why he's not in the Tall Black squad. So that's to clear that up from what we're talking about. He's, very reasonable family stuff coming first. He was doing a lot of work for them for a while. He missed a few games with injury as well, and you could see the difference. So yeah, even though Dante Russo-Nance is back now and playing, so that is one reason to focus on the Nuggets, is that they do have one of our most exciting young players. However, they kind of putting together a bad run of results. It doesn't look like they're going to be too competitive down the end of the stretch. Not as bad as Southland, though. Southland Sharks continue to be winless, but they have signed a new import. They cut one a few weeks ago. They've got a new fella coming in. He's a 6'2" ginger American, so I'm sure that's going to make all the difference. So, from Kentucky, which is at least a balanced state, or at least he went to university there. I don't know if that's where he's from. So I don't think that's going to make much of a difference, and I do think we're seeing quite a clear split between the best teams and the worst teams. The one team I think to highlight is the Canterbury Rams, because they've won 6 in a row, and they've been especially good since Lachlan Olbrich, Australian import, turned up and just been doing fantastic things for them as a big fellow who can score, he can rebound, he can do a little bit of everything. We know how much this league rewards big men who have that kind of skill set, and Olbrich is up there, up there as one of the better MVP candidates from how he's been performing lately. But Canterbury have had maybe a little bit of a fortunate run through our fixtures during these 6 wins. And they face the Wellington Saints next week. They have a double game week. So they've got the Saints, and they've got the Saints in the second game of a double game week. So that's a short turnaround to face a very good Saints team who were able to win on the weekend, even without Isaiah Le'afa. He missed a game, and in comes like Harim Harris back from injury, and they still went. That obviously takes a notch out of their 105 or whatever it was points per game thing. Not going to be scoring so much without Le'afa there, but their defense was fine without Le'afa there, even though he's an excellent defender. They still won that game. Saints versus Rams is massive, because I think that's one that will tell us a little bit more about whether this Rams team is good, or if they're just sort of like top half good. They are defending champions after all, the Canterbury Rams. So there's pedigree there. They know how to win, but they maybe, they lost to the Tuatara, I think, earlier on the season, and it might have been Nelson or something at the start. And that was before Olbrich turned up as well. So this particular week of fixtures that we just had kind of just saw the better team winning all the games. Like Tuatara won a couple games, Saints won. Like neither of them played anywhere near their capacity. I think Taranaki had a good win. Like those teams that we expect to have won those particular fixtures did. But next week we might get a few more of these, like some of the better teams playing against the better teams. And in particular, that Rams versus Saints game is one I'm very curious to see how that tracks out, because I think that's a little bit of a let's prove it game for the Canterbury Rams.
Let's finish with some Kiwi County Tour cricket, where we have Kiwis playing for 4 teams. And those 4 teams have combined for 2 wins. So Blair Tickner, Derbyshire, in Division 2, they've got 1 loss and 4 draws. Lancashire, with Tom Bruce and Will Williams, they have 1 win, 3 losses and 2 draws. Worcestershire, Nathan Smith, they got 2 losses and 4 draws. Nottinghamshire have 1 win, 2 losses and 3 draws. No one really did anything except for Nathan Smith. And Nathan Smith only took 2 wickets. But he did hit 60 runs. And if you haven't seen this clip of Nathan Smith and his 60 runs, check it out, because that dude plays some shots. He is a very crisp hitter of a cricket ball, and he's a very good cricketer, which everyone would assume, because he's like a really good bowler. He's the leading wicket-taker in Plunkett Shield. He's got career first-class bowling average of 26. after 51 games. But he also is pretty damn good with the bat. He has batted in 6 innings and he's got 3 half centuries. There's maybe, what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4 players in that Worcestershire team who have passed 50 runs 3 times or more. And Nathan Smith is one of them. He's averaging 42 with the bat this season in county championship cricket. He's got 17 wickets at an average of 26. And he is, like, the wickets have dried up. And I think, as we were discussing with someone on Facebook, that did seem to coincide with the changing back to the Duke ball. So Nathan Smith was really good with the Kookaburra ball, hasn't taken as many wickets with the Duke ball. And that's all right, whatever, because he's scoring runs. These are his scores this season. 4, 58, 33 not out, 57, 0 and 60. So he has batted in, what did I say, 6 innings. And he's only got 2 scores below 10. He's got 3 50-plus scores and a 33 not out. And it's not just like he's, hitting a few boundaries. Like he's playing strokes. He's whipping it off his legs. He's creaming the drives through cover. Spinner comes on, 6 over cow corner, over pitch, driving past mid-off. He is a high-quality cricketer, and we're going to go full into Black Caps mode, I reckon, for the T20 World Cup, and we'll see. I'll still be on the Kiwi County Tour beat. We'll still be covering these lads, but if there's one cricketer you need to know about right now from New Zealand, it is Nathan Smith, because Will O'Rourke, Ben Sears, Muhammad Abbas. Anyone else you want to throw out there? High-profile young cricketers, Glenn Phillips, Rachin Ravindra, Finn Allen. Like, all these dudes have commanded attention through their cricket with New Zealand. I mean, crikey jack. Zach Folks is now in the Black Caps.
Yeah, Tim Robinson. It's a long list in recent years.
Like, all these dudes are playing for New Zealand. But you've also got Nathan Smith, who dominated domestic cricket last summer, and now he's just scoring runs for fun in county championship cricket. And for all the train spotters who do love to separate Division 1s and Division 2s, whether it's Devon Conway's career or any other county championship stats, Nathan Smith's doing this in Division 1. He scored 60 runs with a strike rate over 100, might I add. What did he do? 60 runs with a strike rate of 105. And he did it against Kamar Roach. Sean Abbott, the Australian seamer. Daniel Worrell, who's that? Oh, he's the former Aussie who apparently he's so good in county championship cricket, he might play for England. Like, Nathan Smith is scoring runs against these dudes after being one of the best cricketers in New Zealand last summer. So you got that headline status, Black Caps action, young players coming in, and I don't think folks are really aware of how good those young players are, as well as the footballers, as well as the rugby league players. But we've also got this other guy, Nathan Smith, playing really well in county championship as well.
And I did take the liberty of checking those highlights as you suggested that, and yeah, like, this isn't a tail ender just scoring all their runs over cow corner. Like, he did smash the spinner over there, but like, all those boundaries at the start of his innings are of seam bowlers bowling length, and it's just like, a little bit too full, punch you down the ground for 4. A little bit too wide, slap you through the covers. There was a back foot drive at one point early on. Like, that's classy batsmanship. That's not a tail. Those are not tail ender runs. That's good stuff. Those are all rounder runs. That's a solid, well put together 50. And then the way that the spinner comes on and he slog sweeps him away, like, yeah, get some of that, bit of the, like, the classy strokesmanship. And then that's still a classy stroke, but it's also big power, like levels. That's a fine highlights package. That one. Am I right in saying as well is that Michael Rae's popped up over in some
Ooh.
county cricket?
Ooh. Ooh, let me have a quick search. I was going to say Andy did a back foot punch, and then you brought up the back foot punch, so that was good because I love a back foot punch as a sign, as an indicator of a high quality cricketer.
That is a shot that you only play if you take your batting seriously. Like if you're coming in at number 9 and just Tim Southee's not going to play that shot. Tim Southee's a good batter for what he does, but he's not going to play that shot, which is why he's not going to bat in the top 7 at any point. That's a less serious batter is going to try slug that. A classy batter is going to stroke that through the gap.
I've got a Now we've got a little bit of extra funk in the Kiwi County Tour. Michael Rae,
an extra headband.
An extra headband. He is playing for Warwickshire in Division 1. So he's now in Division 1. He played 1 game, and I'll bring up his stats. He took 2 wickets and 3 wickets. So I have to try and get the videos of these, which will be fun to see how Michael Rae's doing. So after 1 game, he's got 5 wickets and an average of 24. So shout out to Michael Rae, now on the Kiwi County Tour. Thank you for bringing that up. I missed that. So big up to you. You're obviously tapped in with the Kiwi County Tour.
Gotta stay tapped in.
And I'll add,
you did also point out the football phone squad to me earlier.
Yeah.
That one dropped while we were recording, but helping hand each way.
I think Nathan Smith, he didn't take any second innings wickets. He took 2 in the first innings. He got Rory Burns of he's okay fame. And he also got Ollie Pope, who is pretty damn good. And it was an interesting sequence. He bowled a full ball, Ollie Pope middle to drive straight to a fielder. Next ball nicks him off, but it wasn't a drop catch because it went between the slips for 4. Then he nicks him off the next delivery. So 3 deliveries, and he he kind of worked over Ollie Pope. So that was Nathan Smith. And now we'll check in with Michael Rae. He's playing for Warwickshire. Let's see how Warwickshire. I always get my shires and shires and whatever. I don't care. I'm from New Zealand. We don't have that shit. They don't have a win either. So it doesn't change the winning stat. So we've still got, what did I say, 2 wins and 5 teams now. So it's actually a worse stat.
It actually just got worse.
Does anyone actually want to win some games in county cricket?
Well, I will say when you rolled through all the records, a lot of draws. Maybe they need to come up with some kind of Kookaburra Duke hybrid because I don't know that that's quite fixed the lack of results. Or they just need to find a 5th day or something. They play too much as it is.
As we've talked about before, England don't know what the point of county championship cricket is. So it's no surprise to see that they're just confused about it. Okay, so we've got 10 teams in Division 1. We got 8 teams in Division 2. What does that mean? 18 teams. To finish with, out of 18 county teams, how many teams do you think have more than 1 victory? So 2 plus wins. 18 teams.
What's it been, 4 or 5 rounds or something?
Every team has played 6 games.
6? Okay.
So that's almost the Plunkett Shield season.
Well, if every result was win and a loss, then it would be 50%. Something. Well, I guess you could have wins and then whatever.
Just give me a number, mate.
But clearly, there's so many draws that I don't think that's the case. So I'm going to say 4.
5. So 2 teams.
As soon as I said 4, it felt too low.
Not surprising. 2 teams in Division 2 have more than 2 victories, 2 or more victories. 3 teams in Division 1 have 2 or more victories. So in Division 1, 7 teams have 1 win out of 6 games or less. And in Division 2, 6 teams have 1 win or less out of 6 games. So riveting cricket over there in the county championship cricket. Plunkett Shield cricket's much better. Shout out.
You'd never get that in the Plunkett Shield.
Righto, that is the Niche Cast. Big up yourself. We'll be back on Thursday with another subscriber podcast. If you do enjoy the niche case, the written words, the speaking things, however you get it, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and follow us across all the platforms. There's options to donate. There's options to fund us through Patreon and Substack. And there's an option to be the best you can be yourself. So how about that? Big up yourself. Love yourself. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Church.